The Fed will make more renters in this country in the next 2 years than it has in the last 50.
Real estate investor warns U.S. is entering the greatest correction of his lifetime. Cardone here is on Fox News warning investors and actually trying to give good news to people who have been pushed out of the side because of the unaffordability, that the greatest correction in his lifetime is going to be hitting the U.S. He says, when the interest rates drop, so too are home prices, because then the mortgage applications are going to rise. That's going to make more houses come on the market. That one I'm a little confused about. I don't quite understand. What is your take? I mean, he goes on. We can actually probably play this.
Are real home buyers and sellers alike feeling a massive struggle to close deals or make money? And if you need yet another sign of turmoil, 45% of U.S. real estate agents are struggling to pay rent on their offices. Here to react is private equity fund manager and real estate investor Grant Cardone. Welcome, Grant. So tell me, why are real estate owners and agents not able to pay the rent? What is going on?
Well, because, Rachel, the Fed single-handedly has killed the housing market. The Fed will make more renters in this country in the next 2 years than it has in the last 50, because mortgage applications are at all-time lows. Mortgages are double what rent is today. And it doesn't surprise me that real estate agents are feeling the brunt of this. Back in June of 22, Jerome Powell said that the middle class, everyday people, would disproportionately feel the pain of higher interest rates in his attempt to control inflation. He has not controlled inflation. He has failed miserably. What he has actually done is create it, and in the meantime, stop the housing industry.
Okay, so he says three things here, right, that I kind of want to talk about. Is one, he says that agents cannot afford to pay their rents on office buildings. He then goes on further and he says that the Fed has completely crushed the market, and that there's going to be a big separation between the middle class, or maybe even wiping out the middle class. Right. And then third is, he says Jerome Powell has not gotten a handle on inflation, but yet we are seeing the Fed's pivot, and they're pausing. They're doing the first stage of the pivot of pausing and not raising interest rates. So part of me is, yes, I agree that the interest rates rising has definitely wiped out the middle, especially with inflation. And for him to pause because they're touting the interest rates, touting that the inflation is under control is false. Because you got to remember, last year they changed how they were calculating inflation. So now they're no longer having to go back multiple years, but they are only having to go back a year. So when you're comparing year over year, then yeah, inflation is under control. But he completely wiped out the difference between the inflation from 2020 to now, because they only have to calculate 1 year. So yeah, I agree with Grant here that inflation is definitely not under control.
Yeah, but I think everybody's been saying that. We've been saying that. I think everyday Americans feel that. Here's my one thing. I like Grant. Well, let's remember.
I don't like him.
Well, I like his videos, some of the content he puts out, some of his books. Some of them are really good for people to get into real estate. But the thing is, we have to remember he's a salesman.
Yeah.
So we're going through this article. I'm like, what is he trying to sell here? And the biggest thing is, what is his whole business predicated on? Mm-hmm. What is it?
Real estate.
Well, yeah.
It's
renters.
people.
It's portfolios. It's people like we were talking about our last video.
Yeah.
He's one that has a very large portfolio of multifamily, multiplexes, and his investors pay into those portfolios because of renters.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to. I get what he's saying here, but at both sides, I feel like he's kind of playing both sides.
Well, he does, and he mentions that rent is half the cost it is to buy a house, and we've been saying that for over a year, and just saying really if you're gonna buy a house, you really got to know, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to make home. And some things you can't get when you're renting, which is if you want some land, that's going to be a little bit harder to find a good price rental versus buying it, right? So there are some things to be considered, but when agents are struggling to pay their rent, it's interesting. Of course they're going to try to push this, you should jump on this. One of the last videos we had somebody reach out to us and said, wow, today I had 15 lenders reach out to me and tell me that the interest rates have dropped, and now is a great time to
send us a
get in
screenshot.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. And then you said in this article too, it goes, this is the Fed will make more renters in this country in the next 2 years than it has in the last 50 because mortgage applications are all-time low. So even though the Fed's coming out, you have agents and lenders coming out saying this is the best time to ever buy. I think it's going to have the inverse reaction.
Yeah, well, and in this article, he's talking about and this is something I want to highlight. He says the millennials feel they've missed the golden opportunity to buy, but Grant Cardone goes on and he says actually the golden opportunity is coming, and that's what he's in one sense encouraging. Like, if you feel like you've missed out, don't worry, because the golden opportunity is coming. There's an opportunity that's coming because of what the Fed is doing. And
well, he's saying interest rates will have to come down in order for pricing to come down. This is actually a contradiction to what most people think, because a lot of people comment and actually say that exact thing. He's saying, but when interest rates come down, mortgage applications will go up and people will start selling their homes. Yeah, which we've talked about as well. I mean, what's your thought on that statement there?
Yeah, well, I would agree and disagree. I mean, we still have people that are giving away money. The inventory in our area is tight. We do have low inventory, but we're also right a week before Christmas. Oh my gosh, it's a week before Christmas, and I have done zero Christmas shopping.
Really? You only got a couple days.
I just had that epiphany. But we're a week before Christmas, so obviously inventory is going to be low. Normally, that's the lowest time, because nobody should be having their house on the market. The only people that have their house on the market are the people that have to sell, or it's vacant, or But I want to get a little bit further, because there's a couple other things that he says is very interesting. So let's just go back to this.
What would you recommend he do?
Well, what he should do is get out of the way. There's no time in history in my lifetime that the Fed actually controlled interest rates. Supply and demand is what controls interest rates. As long as people are spending their money, that means they want that product or service. At what point it gets to a price where I no longer find it valuable, I will no longer continue to purchase that. And people want homes. People want to live in a single family home. I don't personally think it's a great investment.
Now, when he evaluates an asset, and that's, buying 101. If I buy this, can I turn around and rent it if I can't make the payment? And he's saying that there's a point where it doesn't make sense for him to buy it.
I've gotten ragged out on it, but he should step aside, get out of the way, let the market do its thing. Interest rates will have to come down in order for pricing to come down.
Right.
This is actually a contradiction to what most people think, but when interest rates come down, mortgage applications will go up, selling their homes.
Well, the World Economic Forum had this famous commercial where they talked about the Great Reset, and they said, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And you're seeing that happening. You're saying that we are becoming a renter nation. I say it's by design. Explain what you mean by it.
So real fast, I just want to kind of hit on this, because she's saying by design that this is part of a greater scheme here, that you will own nothing and be happy in the World Economic Forum, because there's a greater agenda at play here. And we're not going to go too far into the weeds, but I think it's important to talk about, because
we have to, because a lot of people that comment in our comments say keep politics out of real estate. But my personal opinion, you can take it with a grain of salt, whatever you want to do, but I feel that real estate is dictated by politicians and politics, because I feel if you cannot follow the policies, politicians and politics that are being set in place, you won't understand real estate. Yeah. To me, it's a direct correlation, because we live in real estate. Yeah. And every single policy and everything that happens from city level to state level to federal level affects real estate when it comes down to the policies of it. And people need to understand that. And I feel like everybody's like, keep it separate. You can't say separate.
Yeah. We think about this. So a couple things. And I'm going to say this, but I also want to pull up this article about how Idaho grew substantially. Thousands of blue state residents flock to Idaho, bringing conservative politics with them, according to data. This is a Fox News article. It goes on further, and it says that thousands of conservative-leaning Washington residents fled the blue state from neighboring Idaho. It goes on further. It says 65% of the people who moved here, out of the 119,000, 65 were registered Republicans, and just 12 were registered Democrats. The data goes on further and says that 24% were unaffiliated, or 2% were other. And we weren't surprised to find that Republicans were moving to Idaho. However, we were surprised to see how overwhelming it was. Of those moving to Idaho, a majority of voters from the 48 out of the 49 states are Republican. The Republican Idaho Secretary of State, Phil McRain, told Fox News Digital. So when we're talking about politics, yes, you have to keep your pulse on the politics, because what policies are going on in California, Washington, Oregon, really throughout the U.S., and then what politically is driving Idaho, that helps form who's moving here, right? Like 65% of those were saying, yeah, I'm guessing that's only 65. I bet you
it's a direct correlation. Yeah. I don't even know if people even know if they're liberal, Republican, conservative, what side they're on. I think they just like. I feel that people moving to Idaho don't like the overreach of tyranny. They don't like the overreach of government control, and they don't like the lack of freedom of speech. I mean,
or protection.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we were shown somebody who moved here 6 months ago, and a little bit more than 6 months, and they've been just kind of taken the advice of rent first because you don't know where you want to be. I mean, they wanted to live in Eagle, Idaho.
Right.
And then after living here for 6-7 months, they realized, I don't want to live in Eagle because I'm going to lose 15 years of my life by living in Eagle because of how long it takes to get everywhere. And so now they've completely changed where they wanted to go. But if they were to buy, it would be a lot harder to make that adjustment, right? But going back to this is like they were trying to move here, and they appreciate that as of right now, cops can be cops. Obviously there's going to be corrupt cops wherever you go, but cops can be cops, meaning they can enforce the law. They can arrest people, and they don't have to, these people don't have to worry about walking around and stepping on needles or that kind of stuff. So I think part of the migration part of migration factors is like, okay, how clean is the area? What are the policies? Are the policies restricting cops, or are the policies allowing cops to do? And that's just one drop in a bucket of a greater thing.
It's very true, and that's why when people keep saying keep politics out of real estate, I can't.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying, I think most people moving here align with the conservative values, but they could be central, they could be left leaning. But the problem is when they're escaping a state for things they're escaping, policies, overreach, crime, but they come here and they vote the same.
Yeah.
Or they fall, or I wouldn't say vote the same, or they continue the same policies or traditions they had in the states that they escaped.
Yeah.
And then they come here and complain about it.
Right.
That's a problem. I mean, everybody's free to move.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest takeaway from this is if you're moving to the state of Idaho, or if you're moving into any other state, Idaho is just not, it's special in state where people are moving to. People are moving to Florida, Texas. People are moving all over the place.
Right.
And you also got liberals and left moving to blue states because that's what they align with.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're moving here to Idaho, realize that the majority of people here align with a certain value set, and that's what they like. People like traditional families. Yeah. People like police. People like, they're pro-freedom here. People love freedom of choice.
Yeah.
That's what we love here.
Yeah.
And it's portrayed here as in a positive light. I went to, the elementary school my daughter go to. There's a giant sign that says, "In God We Trust." Yeah. And it's above a giant flag, above a giant military memorial. I mean, it's amazing. Right. And to see that in a public school, I would never be able to see that, like from the state, from Oregon, from where I'm from. Yeah. That's frowned upon, and it's sad.
Going back to this, you will own nothing and be happy. And right now it's very hard to be an owner in real estate unless you bought a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And, when supply is staying tight, it's still very expensive. And right now, a trend here in the local market is people are buying with cash, or people are buying and super over leveraged. I mean, we're talking about 40% unaffordability, right? So we're talking about like somebody who's buying is using up 40% of their income just for their mortgage. And that's a scary thing, because if an emergency happens, if something, then it's going to create either greater debt or something else.
Why do you think that is?
What do you mean?
Why do you think people are over leveraged right now in purchasing real estate?
Because people have bought it, in my opinion, into a lie of like, this is a great time and prices are going to skyrocket, which there is a chance, right? I mean, we talked about Venezuela, right? Venezuela, in a matter of 10 years, created a high class and a lower class, and 95% of the people living there.
Which I already think we're here. We're here in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a direct correlation between classes and social economic classes in the States, and it's to full light. And again, to me, it's just people get what they ask for.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we're there. We're there in the sense that people can't afford to buy a house, and they're willing to buy it, and because they want to have the American dream of owning a house, even though right now it doesn't seem that way, unless the market flips. And Robert Kiyosaki, I just listened to an article from him where he's like, by gold, by Bitcoin, like the government is trash right now. The dollar is losing value compared to other currencies in the world, and so like that fear makes, I understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand it as far as people saying, "Hey, let's go buy a hard asset."
We can directly correlate with like comments we got in our last video. Somebody said, he's like, "I'm out every day. People are buying stuff. People have new cars. People are still flying. People are going all over the place for vacations," and he has no idea how they're doing it. But if you look at the data, it's debt. Yeah, it's credit card debt. I mean, we were in record.
If you don't look at the data, then it is, wow, the economy is doing great.
Yeah,
if you look at the data, then you say, oh, it's debt. The current state of the economy, some of it is is Trump. So that's all I'm saying is, whether it's 5%, 10%,
Let's-
15%,
I mean,
but there's a good amount of the current administration that has really not
100%.
helped, right? Our debt ceiling has gone through the roof, and we keep increasing our debt ceiling.
That's the thing, and I hate to keep cutting you off there, but I think it goes past Trump and Biden right now. I don't agree with anything with Biden's doing politically, our monetary policies. And everybody's like, well, they don't control the monetary policies. Well, I hate to break it to you, they do, even though the Fed's a private entity. But anyways, I think this goes back decades. I mean, we can go back to 71 if you want to get into that whole thing about, taking the dollar off the gold standard. It goes past Biden and Trump. That's all I'm going to say on that is people I think people take little sections of the videos and they're like, this guy's a Trump or this guy, is anti-Biden. I'm anti anything anti-American or an American way of life exceeding personal excellence. Interest rates recently just dropped, but I'm just really curious to see how that's going to play an effect because I don't feel a lot of people are ready to jump yet. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you think? Do you think people are ready to jump because interest rates dropped?
I think there will be some movement of people who felt like they missed out on the lower rates and they feel like they have to jump. But I also think the state of the economy as a whole is worse today than it was when the interest rates were the last time at 6% or 5%. And because of that, it's going to eliminate a lot of people.
I just feel people are tapped out.
Right, and that's what I mean. The state of the economy is worse off today than it was a year ago or 6 months ago when the interest rates were sitting at 6.5%. But or a year ago when they were at 5.5%, and we saw a huge decline in buyer demand because mortgage applications are still low. We're not all-time low, but we are close to all-time low still for mortgage applications because people can't afford. I mean, if you could rent one house at $1,500 a month and buy that same house and pay $3,000 to $4,000 a month, why the heck would you not rent it? Like it makes, other than like I have to have a house to live in. I
think that comes down to pure pressure, our society pressure telling you that you have to buy. Because a lot of people feel if interest rates come down, that the market's going to skyrocket, which I don't, like I said, I don't think so. Yeah, I think people in this, they're tapped, like we're saying. And then you were talking about keeping rates high because we need to squeeze people. But at the same time, I feel like I'm always going to go back. If they're so high, I feel like people can't do anything. I feel like they're stuck anyways.
Yeah. Well, and to clarify, the squeeze is also helping keep the dollar value up. If we can't keep the dollar value,
I think that's a lost cause on that.
Well, yeah. If you want to hear something else that we're talking about, leave it in the comment below. And if you want to see more of this, there's another video in the link right here. So make sure you click on that.